Hello everyone! I just got back from watching the FNAF movie, and oh boy do I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of things to talk about. But before we get into the video, I have to let you know, it was in the title, and I'm going to say it again, this is full of spoilers. I'm going to be talking about everything, I'm going to be talking about plot points, different ideas that I have. I'm going to be spoiling a lot, okay? So, if you do not want spoilers, do not watch this. This is not for you. Go watch the movie, then come back, okay? And if you haven't watched the movie and you want spoilers, stop the video, go watch the movie. It's going to be on Peacock pretty soon as the time of you probably seeing this, or you can go to your local theater and watch the movie, as that would support the studio and support Scott and support possibly a sequel. So I just want to let you know that. Disclaimer, spoilers. There's spoilers in this video, okay? It's because we're talking about a lot. So this is mainly for people that have seen the movie, okay? All right, good. Glad we get that out of the way. Let's hop right into this. So let's start off with talking about some of the awesome positives that I walked away from this film with. Number one has to be the pizzeria. It looked amazing. The set looked awesome. Everything looked great. I mean, the pizzeria, as we saw in Docos and on Rosbowski and 8-Bit Ryan, as they toured it, it looked 30 times better in the movie. It looked good there. It looked even better on the big screen. It was awesome. It was so cool to see Mike, other characters like the security guard, Vanessa, Abby, and then the animatronics kind of make their way around. It felt massive. I know that if you actually look at like FNAF 1, the pizzeria really isn't that big. Well, this place felt huge. It felt awesome. The pizzeria was awesome. The set was amazing. It was just visually beautiful, and it was awesome to see. And great job to Blumhouse on that, and everyone that was working on the set. You did a fantastic job. The next positive that I have to talk about is the animatronics. They looked and just... they were amazing. They were awesome. Their movement, the way that they would just down the hallway, I loved it. They never looked CGI-ish. Some people were talking about like CGI at one point on Twitter, because Twitter likes to panic about everything, but they looked great. I don't understand. They looked awesome. They looked present. They looked scary. They looked ominous. They had that vibe to them. And then there was the scene where they were playing around with Abby, and you know they were like happy for a second. They looked great. It was like they adapted properly to whatever the tone of the scene or that part of the part of the movie. They always fit in. They always look great. I loved it. And the animatronics, they get A+ from me. They were awesome, and I gotta give credit to the people that worked on them, because you did an amazing, fantastic job. I spoke about the animatronics, but I want to just further this point. The costumes looked great. Even when they weren't on Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Roxy, on all of them, they just looked great. They all looked great. There was like that Golden Freddy, that robot looked great. I mean, I really don't understand what that was, to be honest with you. I'll talk about that later in the video. I have a theory about that, but I just loved the costumes. Even when there were the dead people that were in the suits that Mike found us, the people that broke in, when Mike found them, even then, they just looked great. The Ella doll looking machine, more on that later. The Ella doll springlock suit, like all of that just looked amazing. Just once again, reiterating the point, y'all did amazing. You did a great job. This movie could win an award for like the best set design and best costume design, because they killed it. The other major positive that I want to point out is the acting. The acting was awesome, whether it be Mike, William, Vanessa, our unnamed villain. Everyone did a great job acting. More on the script and the lines later, but as far as like their performance on screen and as their characters, it was awesome. They did a great job as adapting for their roles, for the people that they were, who they were, right? Josh Hutcherson becoming Mike. Like, it was great. It was awesome all around. Their acting was great. Them as their characters was awesome. More on the script and their lines later, in the dialogue later. We'll talk about that later. But their acting job was awesome. It was amazing, and I have to give them massive props, like an A+. It was awesome. I nothing against it. They did a great job. So the other positive that I have is the animatronic slaughter, I'll call it, or whenever the animatronics would kill someone or harm someone, it was always good in my opinion. Now, this might be a very subjective opinion. A lot of people have thought otherwise. I've seen takes saying that they were awful. I liked it. I think it was great. It perfectly balanced PG-13. It balanced, what Five Nights at Freddy's is. Did a great job. I loved seeing, the cupcake on the dude. Bonnie's scene was awesome. My favorite by far, though, was when the other guy, I forgot his name, but when the other guy was kind of on his own, and he was like the leader of the group, and he had like the whole scene with Foxy running down the hallway and getting him. I think that was all great. I think that was a good chunk. That was perfect. And then later on, of course, when the animatronics do get William Afton, that was pretty cool. The spring locks, more on him later. But I loved it. I loved the animatronic slaughter, as I'm calling it. That's just going to be the word I use for it. I loved it. It was great. I know some people were disappointed that it wasn't like more killing, but at the same time, you have to remember how many characters are in the story. We can't just have random people like walking in, Like people just walking in and dying. There has to be a reason for why they're dying. Why does it make sense to the story? And the way that it was done was awesome, and I have to give them credit once again. Great job on that. Another thing that I want to point out is the mask. If you guys don't remember, there's a mask that kind of gets lowered in the trailer, and then you see it in the film, like it lowers onto their face, and there's like the spinning blades. It'll basically slice your face off if you let it actually touch you. I loved it. I loved that machine. I don't know why. I just love how, I mean, the security guard died, but I like how Mike got out of it. I don't know. I just love the idea of it. I know that MatPat said it was like a remnant extractor or an agony extractor. I have a theory about that you'll hear later in the video, but I just want to say it was cool. That was, for some reason, I just loved it. I don't know why. I just was so attached to it. I thought that it was a really cool idea. And I'd love to see maybe other integrations of that in the future. Maybe it's like a chest plate. Maybe it's like it's kind of like Saw. It was weird. I liked it. It was really cool. And I just wanted to shout that out as a major positive and something that I genuinely enjoyed. Another weird positive that I have is the aunt, or the unnamed villain, before we actually saw her role in the film. You watched it, you know that she's the lady trying to get custody of Abby. She's the one trying to take her away from Mike. And I will say, she's annoying, but it's in an endearing way. Whenever she would do something dumb in the theater or just like say something entitled or stupid, everyone laughed. It was enjoyable. I mean, it wasn't like she was enjoyable. She was actually like one of the most annoying characters ever. Her lawyer, that was hilarious. It was just interesting. It was good. She was annoying. Like, she's annoying. That's who she is. She's annoying. But then also, like, just funny. Like, it's funny to mock her, make fun of her lawyer, the MatPat cameo. When MatPat showed up on the screen, my entire theater just started clapping. We all started clapping and screaming. Couldn't hear what he said. I don't know if he said, this is a theory. I don't even know if he said, that's a game theory. No idea what he said. Everyone clapped and was screaming and, like, whistling and just yelling. That was all it was. No joke. No idea what MatPat said. Absolutely no clue, because everyone was clapping. I was clapping. I was freaking out when I saw him. Same for Corey X Kenshin. It was great. But at the same time, I wish I knew what he said. So maybe you guys can comment that down below if you've seen the movie, because I have no idea. But back to her. She was an interesting plot point, and I thought that she was interesting for what she did in the movie, and it was a good addition. Now it's time for the sad part. Now it's time to talk about the negatives and other, some things that I think that could have been fixed, changed, whatever, that I didn't like about the movie, and there aren't that many. I only have a few, so don't worry. This isn't like some crazy essay. But the first thing that just kind of stuck out to me that I didn't love was the writing and the dialogue. Now, there were, there's more on that later, but there were times when the progression of the story felt abrupt. Like when Vanessa and Mike first started talking to each other, and like their progression of like their relationship, it wasn't romantic, but it was like their just relationship. The way that they were connecting over time, it progressed very odd. And I'm wondering if there were scenes that were cut that expanded on it, but it just felt, I don't know, sometimes it just progressed, like, it took a jump, and as a viewer, I didn't understand where the jump went from. Like, how did we get to this? Like, the part where she was at the lake, like the river, and she threw the pills, I didn't really, like, that one just felt a little out of character, like for some random cop lady that you just met. Like, I didn't really understand that. So I think there was just cut scenes that would have expanded on it that they got rid of, but that was just like a couple dialogue, a little bit of the writing, just some of that stuff I just didn't love and I think could have been tweaked, but at the same time, it might have just been cut because it wasn't that good, or just for the sake of time. So this isn't really a negative for me, but it's just something that I have to throw in the negative category, and it's the fact that if you walked into this film and you had only played like FNAF 1, FNAF 2, and then never touched the franchise again, you would have no idea what you're walking into. And I feel bad for you because you're probably confused. You're probably like, oh, what was this all hyped about? There were times in the movie theater where I was looking to my left and right, trying to see if anyone was confused. Because it's just, if you did not know, you would have walked away very disappointed. And trust me, it's good. Just watch a game theory, watch a film theory. There's so much to understand about this franchise, and trust me, you will love it. But the main negative that I have is that this does not cater to anyone who is new. It's full of fan service. It's really what it is. The movie is teaching you as if you know what Five Nights at Freddy's is, and if you've played up to maybe Security Breach, or it's kind of built off of that, and that's good if you're a fan. If you're a fan like me, that's awesome. But if you're not a fan, you're gonna walk away a little confused because there were characters, there were things that felt skipped and rushed that you didn't understand. And I have a slight feeling, this is a theory, a film theory, that the 3-hour cut was actually going to explain and go into more detail about some of the things and provide a smoother experience if you weren't a fan, if you had no idea what was going on. And I have a feeling that they cut it because they were like, this is too long. If you're a fan, you'll get bored because it's explaining stuff you already knew. But if you're not a fan, then you're going to be kind of confused when you walk out of the theater. And I think they went with the fans because they realized that the fans are the one that they're gonna watch this movie twice, 3 times. They'll be the ones that financially support this film. Where they're not fans, they have no allegiance to Five Nights at Freddy's. They're gonna walk in and walk out and be like, whatever. So that's just like a one critique that I have, and that's why critics, if you look at, as right now, has like a 38%, and that's because critics, they just don't understand Five Nights at Freddy's. They've watched, they went from watching some drama movie, then they watched, an action movie, and now they're watching Five Nights at Freddy's. They have no idea. They don't understand the lore and everything. So when they critique it because of the story, it's because they don't understand. So that's really it. That's not negative for me, but it's a negative if you're a new viewer. Now, going off of what I said about, like, if you're not a fan, you won't know, we have to talk about William Afton. William Afton has that's like the beginning portion, and then he has the end when he appears, and there's like that final fight, and there's like him getting, spring locked. If you don't know who William Afton is or who Steve Raglan was going to be, then you have no idea why he was the villain. You don't really understand. And part of that is because fans knew that Steve Raglan, Matthew Lillard, was going to be William Afton. But if you didn't, it was a surprise. And my partial complaint with William Afton is that the ending wasn't as long or as satisfying as I think it could have been. It was satisfying. I liked it. But it could have been better. And once again, I'm going back to that 3-hour cut. I think that there was going to be more of a build-up as to who William Afton was, building up that story, but they cut it because they just realized that they're going to cater to the fans and not the not fans. And I think that's why the ending might feel a little abrupt or a little weird or out of place if you're not a fan, because you did not expect Steve Raglan to be William Afton, and that's why that doesn't make sense. My only complaint, it was cool. It was cool seeing him, get string locked. It was cool seeing him say, "I always come back." That was so awesome. Like, I was freaking out. And it was cool, like, at the end, what they did is, like, he's kind of locked up in that room, and the kid's, like, closing the door, and he's, like twitching. Like, it was cool. It was great. It was awesome. But at the same time, and what I have to give credit, one last thing about William Afton, I have to give credit. They explained the premise of the bodies being in the suits, therefore they possess the suits. William Afton's body is in his suit, he's going to possess Springtrap. Like, they made it very clear. So if you weren't a fan and you did not know, you understood that. So if a sequel happens, you understand how that happens. But if you're not a fan, you also don't really understand why William Afton was the owner. That's kind of my one complaint. It's a little confusing, it's a little complex, so just kind of on the idea of, like, if you're not a fan. But at the same time, I'm happy that they did go with the fans because they're the ones that are going to make this movie succeed, and they're going to be the ones that this movie was made for. So now it's time for the theorizing. What are my theories about this movie? What connections did I think of? And I have 3 that instantly came to mind. Number 1, the Ella doll. I don't have any images of it because I don't have Peacock, but if there was a suit within the back, if you watch the movie, you'll know this, that looked like the Ella doll in a way. It wasn't exactly one for one, but I thought that was interesting. It's the Ella doll. It kind of looks like the Ella doll on the cover and the one that we see in 1:35 a.m. Thought that was cool and thought that was a cool connection. Next up, Fetch. It was interesting to see Fetch. If you don't know, there's a suit in the back, if you didn't notice. There's kind of like a suit in the background that has like a bone, like a medallion of like a bone on it, like a gold bone. And that is like Fetch. It's like a physical human animatronic of Fetch. And that was pretty cool, and that was a cool detail that they put together. The other connection that I thought of was the new kid, and it's my least favorite Fazbear Fright story, but it was used in this movie. What Scott basically did is he took the idea of spirits being inside of a suit, just to provide background context. The new kid is a Fazbear Fright, which has a kid whose body is in a suit, and he's able to manifest a physical form that walks around and appears everywhere. It looks different than it is in the suit. That's why, for example, the kid that was in the Bonnie suit had, different details. Their clothing resembled who they were. Chica had the yellow shirt or the yellow arms, so that's why that makes sense. They used the new kid. It was this idea of a spirit being able to, leave its suit, its body, and move around and interact with the rest of the world. So it used that concept from the new kid, and that was cool. It was done well. It was, if they didn't do that, I would be a little concerned as to how you would build, Mike's story and that whole, it would be interesting. So I'm happy that they did it, and it's a good thing that Scott used, and credit to him for reading his own Fazbear Frights, because sometimes I regret it. 2 things I want to point out before I get to my final rating or, score of the movie. And number 1, it's that now I understand why Scott Cawthon has taken so long. It's because it's impossible. It is impossible to make a film for the non-fans and the fans. Scott Cawthon, I assume, was trying to make a script that would cater to the non-fans because FNAF wasn't as big as it is now. There's, profitability. How do we make this make money? And now that the FNAF community and the fan base is so large, like my theater was full of FNAF fans, he can make that. He can make a movie for the fans and know what's going to make money. And that's what was important at the end. Could Scott have made a movie for the non-fans? Yes, he could have. Very easily. And that might be what the 3-hour cut is. But by making a movie for the fans, I think the movie has fulfilled its purpose. It was really for the fans. And I could be wrong. I don't know, Scott. I don't know. Sorry. I'm guessing here. But that's kind of what I got when I walked away from the movie. This next thing is like a mini theory that I have, and it's that if you watch the film theory episode of FNAF, at the end, MatPat said that mask was like a remnant extractor and that I was gonna it was like agony. He said all that stuff about it, and a weird theory that I have, MatPat made that intentionally weird. He knew the internet would freak out. He knew the internet would be like, oh, MatPat, you're crazy. That doesn't make sense. I think MatPat kind of knew where the film was going to go. He was a part of it. He did appear in the film. So we had to make a theory that was like deliberately vague and had some things in it. He had to make a theory, of course, on FNAF. It's impossible that his channel's built, a large portion of that is built on that. So he has to talk about it. But I do think that he did have to, he threw that in there kind of as like some crazy, out of this world prediction. And like the whole thing with like Baby and us going to a bunker and all that stuff. He did that on purpose. He was trying to just throw us off. He knew what the movie was going to be. So he kind of made that as like let's watch them freak out on Twitter. That's basically what he did. So giving my final rating on the film, I'm going to have to give it a 10 out of 10. A 9.5 out of 10. 9.5 or 10 out of 10. It's kind of like fluctuating between there. Because this movie was exactly everything I wanted it to be. It was great. It had all the characters. I'm telling you, I have no major gripes with this movie. I understand where some of the things kind of went wrong or they weren't perfect. But to me, it was great. I know where the critics might think, I know where like a non-FNAF fan could be coming from, but personally, it was exactly what I wanted. I want to see it again. I'm not joking. I want to buy another ticket and go to like tomorrow's early morning showing. I really want to see this movie again. And as a fan, that's exactly what they wanted from us. I loved it. It's great. I'm going to be seeing this again. No doubt about it. I'm so excited. I hope you guys enjoy it. When you see it, I appreciate you guys. I already know some of you are watching this and you didn't watch the movie and you want it spoiled. And that's why I didn't go too crazy. Like Vanessa getting stabbed by William Afton. Aw, dang it, I said that.